president they're friends with. The Pope has been a long time holding up this hopes until this wrong time's over. Let's make the most of it. So surreal, this fast evolves like a thin girl wearing a padded bra. It's so bizarre, so bizarre, so bizarre.
エコノミックコラプス、
ソーシャルアップヒーバル、アトローシャスバイオレンス。This is the character of
war.There are a lot of games about war. Some put a gun in the player's hands and make them act out war like some type of an on-rails Universal Studios ride. Some actually raise questions about war. Some say,
War never changes.
Some say,
War has changed.
I was playing Advance Wars recently.And it has a very Nintendo candy-coated interpretation of war. Troops get swept away by gusts of bullets. Armed countries are cartoony and colorful, named things like Orange Star and Green Earth. The commanding officers of these countries shit-talk each other like old rivals playing a sport, saying things like, "It takes a lot to best me. I'll remember your names, mark my word."It's about what you would expect war to look like through a Nintendo lens. A major plot point touched on in Advance Wars is the conversion of some commanding officers to other armies. Friends become enemies and enemies become friends again. This is a common theme in real-world affairs too, and is one of the most prevalent theses explored in Metal Gear Solid 3.
The world used to be whole.But with the end of the Second World War, the philosophers began to fight amongst themselves, and the world was torn apart. The Cobras, my comrades who trained and fought alongside me, were torn apart as well. The foibles of politics and the march of time can turn friends into enemies just as easily as the wind changes. Ridiculous, isn't it? Yesterday's ally becomes today's opposition, and this Cold War?Think back. When I was leading the Cobras, America and Russia were fighting together. Now, consider whether America and Russia will still be enemies in the 21st century.
Video games are often a strange reflection of reality. The abstraction of war is often just as absurd as the abstraction of punching a garbage can to eat food underneath it. To gain health, of course.But while these kind of distorted reflections are ridiculous, they still hold some truth. Ironically, Advance Wars released on September 11th, 2001, and after the collapse of the Twin Towers, there was a surge of World War II games that oversaturated the market. It got to the point where gamers and the gaming press were practically groaning whenever World War II games were mentioned.Understandably, too, after being repeatedly force-fed what's essentially the same game with different coats of paint. You can only storm the beaches of Normandy so many times before it begins to look like a hollow play acted out by rickety animatronic soldiers. First-person shooters have been a ubiquitous and dominant genre for over a decade, and it was only natural that they would scrap the World War II aesthetic and move on to a more contemporary form after the United States' involvement in the Middle East. The success of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare ushered in a new wave of war games, ones that dealt with real and fictional modern conflicts. Nazis were replaced with North Koreans and Russians, races that were transformed into Bond villains to act as antagonists for virtual wars. These alternate reality storylines tell tales that are starting to eerily mirror what's happening in the world today. As the medium exhausts the setting of modern warfare, it moves on to the futuristic warfare seen in games such as Titanfall and Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. If these games are any indication of what people expect of the future, then it isn't hard to tell that war will still be ingrained in society's operation. The absurdity of war in video games is catching up to the flat-out absurdity of war itself. Wars are becoming as rote, inhuman, inhumane, and outlandish as the games that depict them. The quote-unquote good guys and bad guys will change. The partnerships and instruments will change too. The variables of war will keep shifting, but war itself will remain a constant.